I appreciate that.
Yeah, I was in Oahu in January, and I went to go pick up the new Koa. And when I went in and found out the price, I was like, oh man, this will be really hard to hide from my wife. I'm gonna buy a bunch of other stuff instead. So I totally agree with the pricing. It should certainly be that. I was like, I can't explain this to my wife. This is, I mean,
The next ones will come down. We figured it out, so it'll get better.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, it looks amazing, and I just was like, it was funny because I brought it over, like I picked a number and everything too, and then she like rung it up, and I was like, oh shit, no.
Hold on.
Yeah.
I don't even have a bottle.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I was like, I can do triple digits, but when I was like, oh, that is closer to the other side.
I feel you. When you get charged $4,000 for a barrel getting made, you're like, how am I gonna price this?
Oh my god, it was $4,000.
$4,000. Stupidest thing ever.
What kind of barrel?
It's acacia. It's a endemic Hawaiian acacia. So like we have a weird endemic hardwood.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
You can go to like the tourist traps and you can get like Koa watches and stuff like that. They're like, fuck it, make it a barrel and let's throw some rum in it.
That's exactly what happened. Love
it. Where's New Kyle?
I don't know. Where is my boy? I even brought the Homer mug for my boy.
Oh, there he is.
Love it.
Oh, Ed's got one too. Nice.
The show behind me.
So Ed, 2 nights in a row. You must have had a really good time last night.
I got off a little early tonight and I'm fucking beat, so I needed a drink.
Fucking A, man. Well, I'm happy to have you back. I was gonna reach out to you today because I started uploading all the other happy hours to like YouTube and stuff. And I know we had some like time sensitive conversations last night. So I was like, I'm going to wait a couple days for yours before I upload it. Cause I know there was a couple of things you wanted to figure out first and also just ask, if it was cool to upload it. So
I don't care.
Okay. Well, I mean, like I said, couple time sensitive things. So I wanted to wait, but yeah, we'll get people to about 7:05 and then we'll start the conversation, and it'll be a little bit different because this will be the first time that I have kind of 3 people as the guest. So I think what I'll do is, I'll ask a question and then just kind of pick someone to go first, and then we'll just go from there because all of them will apply to all you guys and all your stuff. So it should work out.
Cool.
I guess we'll see. And then
Jim, I'm Kyle, by the way, man.
I'm Jim.
I heard all kind of awesome things about you, so I'm stoked. I've never like met you. I sat at your bar like 12 or 15 years. It was forever ago when you were at Best.
Yeah, right.
Years. But yeah, it's
likewise, good. Except for your bar,
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, and then Kyle, I've talked to you via email, but both times I've been in Oahu, we haven't been able to link up. So I'm excited that you were willing to do this, and obviously I'm a fan, so I'm looking forward to it. And then Antoine, whatever.
Hello, guys. I think I know everyone here so far. Well, except I don't know Megan. Hi, Megan. Hi, Jim. What's up, buddy?
What's up?
You look good, man.
Thanks. You too.
Yeah, thanks, buddy. Kyle, sir, how's it going, buddy?
Brother.
Okay, hold on a second. I gotta pull up.
I'm trying to answer Reza's here.
So meeting number is shit.
Thanks, Chris.
We got it.
Send Flair coming through. Major.
Always.
Oh, Bacon, you're epic too. Don't worry. You're just surrounded by lots of cool people. Yeah, I think this one definitely has more volatility than the ones in the past just because of the characters involved.
What are you trying to say?
I know exactly.
I was like, hey, Drew, by the way, I'm like feeling really privileged to be a part of these, like, and feeling like kind of like an underdog, but, you know, thanks for having me. They're great. And I'm like, oh, okay, go blast me. Thanks.
Hey, you got to make sure everybody knows.
Muting again. I won't message you again.
Now you know better. That's
Okay. All right. So just so you guys know, like people sometimes will tend to drop in and out as the conversation goes on, and for anybody else that's just listening in, feel free to type questions into the chat, or you can always unmute yourself and just kind of throw your hand up and interrupt a little bit. I try to monitor it as closely as I can, but you know, really we'll just kind of let the guys kind of have carte blanche and kind of go nuts. So for the people who don't know who I am, my name is Drew Garrison and I work with JVS Imports. We're a small boutique distributor here in California. And I basically set up these virtual happy hours to offer a little bit of escapism for, you know, everybody during the whole COVID pandemic, because, you know, a lot of us are so used to talking spirits all day long, you know, 5 days a week, sometimes more, that, you know, have it kind of ripped away from us was, or for me personally, was really hard. And, you know, and I know I've heard that from some other people. So this has been kind of a venue to talk spirits and, you know, sometimes dive into some deeper aspects of some of our favorite people. And with that said, I do have some of my favorite people as guests tonight, and one that I'm aspiring to be in his life more. So that would be Kyle, just so you know, everybody knows. So Kyle's from Kohana Rum, which is based out of Oahu, and then we have Jim Ramdahl, who's coming to us at Seattle, right? Yep. And so he's with Novo Fogo, and so that it'll be a really great addition to the conversation. And then last but certainly not least is going to be Antoine Nixon, who works for Spiribam, which of course has things like Clement and Chairman Reserve, Rum JM, all the fun things that, you know, comes with that. And so tonight's topic was, you know, is going to be sugarcane distillates. And when I was conceptualizing this, like my first person I thought of was Antoine, just because, you know, we're the closest out of the three. And I was like, oh, I'll have Antoine come on and we can talk about this stuff. And then I started thinking about it. I was like, oh, it'd be really cool if we could also get like Kyle's view on this when it comes to, you know, American sugarcane distillate. And then of course, if you're going to be talking sugarcane distillate, then you have to have the conversation about Kasasha. And that's where, you know, Jim is going to be able to offer his expertise. So with all of that said, I want you guys to introduce yourselves, kind of give a little rundown of who you are, you know, your current place in the industry, and then just a little synopsis of, you know, the companies that you're working for. So we'll start with Antoine, then we'll go Kyle, then we'll go Jim.
Hi, Antoine Nixon. I am the West Coast ambassador for a company called Spiribam. We oversee the operations of three distilleries, one in St. Lucia and two in Martinique. Those two Martinique rums being Rum Jam and Rum Clement, and then the St. Lucia distillers, which represents the brands Chairman's Reserve, Bounty Rum, Admiral Rodney, some more molasses based, obviously Martinique being all sugarcane juice AOC rum. I guess my role, I've been with the company for 5 years now. I'm probably the Kevin Bacon of the group, where I think I'm kind of somehow connected to every person who's on the screen, and all through rum. I met most of these people through some journey, whether it be bartending, whether it be working on the brand, whether it be traveling for the USPG. Yeah, I've been very fortunate in this life to live a life of rum and meet a lot of amazing and rad people. So it's cool to kind of see everybody kind of check in and say hi. Yeah, I've been doing this for 4 years. Before that, bartending, running bars and restaurants in Sacramento, California, and Oakland, California, where I currently am living now. And as you can see, I'm holed up in my spare bedroom because you not want to be interrupted by my small little child who would not let this little thing happen without major interruptions if I wasn't hiding away. So, hi.
Okay, Kyle.
Okay, so my name's Kyle Reutner. I'm first of all, thanks for having me. I think it's awesome to be with all you rad people and get to have a little bit of fellowship and cruise. I'm the general manager of a small rum company based on Oahu called Kohana Distillers, Kohana Rum. So we make a fresh sugarcane juice rum akin to the other gentleman here. And yeah, I'm in charge of basically farming it, distillation, and sales. So I have a manager in each of those things. So we're a unique company because we do everything on essentially one property from grass to glass. So that's sort of what I do day to day, is essentially just put out fires every which way on that. But right now it's all farming and making hand sanitizer. It's a little different. Before all this, it was bars and restaurants in Honolulu. So I spent about 15 years running bars and restaurants and working for Awesome Humans, and had a chance to do this about 6 years ago, 5.5. So kicked off and did this. Now I just surround myself with awesome humans and pour rum in people's mouths.
Nice. Jimbo?
I'm Jim. So I manage the whole kind of the western third of the U.S. for Novo Fogo Cachaça. Prior to that, we're a little company. We own a distillery in Brazil, but we have like 7 employees in the U.S. So I'm like kind of a third of the sales team. Before that, I ran bars and restaurants, mostly in Seattle, for the better part of 2 decades. I've been with Novo Fogo for about 3.5 years. Prior to that, for about 3 years, I managed Rumba in Seattle, which is my rum background, and kind of led me into this world. And here I am. I also, if you hear screaming children who might at some point run into this room, that's what's going to happen.
That's totally okay. We actually have a few of us are new dads with children that don't want to listen to us at all right now. So the pandemic's hitting them really hard. So what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Well, that's great, guys. I appreciate again all of you coming out, and I think you all offer a really unique perspective when it comes to a similar process, but then obviously very, very different. And so with that being said, I think that there's a lot of I guess maybe stemming from the Martinique and the AOC and stuff like that, but to me it seems like with a lot of these different companies that are working primarily with sugarcane, that kind of that sustainability means a whole lot, and there's a lot of things that get reused. Some of it's out of necessity, and then some of it just seems like that's just like the right way to do things. So I was hoping that you guys could talk about some of those efforts that each kind of either distillery takes, or like some of the cool things that each one does that kind of sets it apart from your just huge ginormous factory rums and stuff like that. So with this one, we'll start with Kyle, and then go Jim, and then to Antoine.
Yep. All right. So we have, like I said, so we farm everything ourselves. So if there's any in-depth questions anybody ever wants to hit me up, it's just Kyle@kohanarum.com. You guys can ask me all kind of stuff. We only grow heirloom varietals of Hawaiian sugarcane, so stuff that literally hasn't been grown in mass since there were kings here. So we've had to learn our way through a lot of it as far as what's best for it. On the other side of that coin, all of our land has pretty much been raped, pillaged, and plundered by huge corporations for the past 150 years. So we have some really interesting land issues, really fertile soil, really mismanaged land before we got to it. So we're on old Del Monte land. So we have to be really mindful about everything we do because they messed up so heavily before we got into this. So there's a lot going on there. I mean, you still find plastic from their plastic weed mats all over our land because it's pretty nuts. So we have some interesting trials and tribulations going with that. But for us, it's really, we're on an island. There's no major farming that occurs here anymore. We're in a post-sugar society in Hawaii. So for us, from the like farming regimen, it's just being smart about everything we do. So we retail all of our bagasse after cutting it down. So if you guys don't know, bagasse is the spent sugarcane matter. Once it's been juiced, it's still got a little bit of nutritional goodness in there. There's still stuff. We till it in, either compost it, give it away to mushroom chicken farmers, or re-till it into our land if we've got new land for it. And that's the biggest thing. We're not able to burn it because there's a tiny bit of silica in it, and the US doesn't like you biomass converting any sort of sugarcane stuff. So we've got some unique hoops to jump through. So pretty much ours all goes back into compost or fertilizer. And then the other major problems that you have is obviously, there's CO2 emissions, which we're working on, but we don't currently have any way we're offsetting that. That's what we're going after next. We have what you do with the stillage. So what happens with the effluent after you've made rum, cachaça, whiskey, whatever you do, you still got stuff left over in the container. It's really awesome. The pH is actually at a nice spot. It works as essentially it's like weed spray. So we just go out and actually spray it back into our fields, which is pretty dope. And then thinking about just water use. So converting into looped systems wherever we can, as much natural cooling like wells, and then just trying to be really mindful about it. And just trying not to be a dick to the land, I guess, is sort of what we do. I don't know.
One thing I'd like you guys to expand upon, and Jim and Antoine, I want you guys to do the same thing, but when you go to the to Kohana and you actually visit the distillery, like you're not just looking at a distillery. There's also like a little fish farm there. There's gardens and stuff like that. And I know that there's some unique aspects to the other spots as well. So could you just expand upon that a little bit further and really kind of sell people on visiting the distillery if they can?
Yeah, for sure. So one thing that's interesting about us is because we're a relatively new company, there's a lot of other farms that popped up at the same time. So a lot of other small plot farming. So we share our neighborhood with 30 other tiny farms and then 2 very, very large ones. So we've got, one of our co-founders owns the lettuce farm next door that, aquaponically produces thousands and thousands of pounds. It's just a lot of neighbors that are doing the right things. I mean, I can't take credit for any of them. It's just being sort of cool by association. We just try to do our best to make sure they all have, awesome ways of getting their products across too. I mean, it's tough because you can come and check us out and we'll wander around the cane fields and do all of that. But there's sort of a changing dynamic all the time with the other farmers. So I never, except for the lettuce guys, it's always new folks.
Nice. Yeah, it's a really, really cool spot, and it's fun. So for people who haven't been there, it's one of those distillery tours that you can actually like trick your whole family into going to, and they won't be that mad at you because there's more than just the booze. Because I know that I've gotten in trouble for that in the past. But when there's other stuff to show, like they're just kind of like, oh, okay, all right, that was cool. We didn't necessarily understand the distillation or the crushing part of it, but like the fish were really cool to see. And it's like, all right, yeah, I'll take it. So, all right, so moving on to Novo Fogo, and Jim, what are some of those practices that Novo Fogo is doing, and then what's kind of some of the unique aspects of the distillery itself?
So many. So Novo Fogo, so down in Brazil, we're located in the Atlantic rainforest, and there is less than 10% of the Atlantic rainforest left, and that's real bad. And so basically everything around us is like protected land. You can't cut down any trees. So the farmland we have is that's it. And so we have farmland that's already been sectioned off, and farmland forever, as far as we know. But the reality, so we're 100% organic, and that's really just to take care of our environment around us, because that's like, to not be organic in our environment would not be great. We're a zero waste distillery. We produce no waste. So a lot of the things we do for that, we harvest by hand. We only press once with an electric press. We're actually installing a solar panel array probably this year that'll be able to power the press even if there's no power. We already have a battery array that will store power, because we're out in the boonies, so the power goes out all the time. So we already have like a battery array to power that when we lose power. But we're trying to get it off the grid and have solar panels installed this year. It's gravity fed into the fermentation tanks, so no power there. Gravity fed from there into the stills. The stills are powered by steam put off by cooking the bagasse. The rest of the cane waste kind of gets traded, kind of the same thing. It gets traded to chicken farms for chicken manure, to basically make a fertilizer out of the two for both of our fields. All the heads and the tails go into kickstarting the boiler and cleaning products. That's about it. We are going to install a closed loop circulation system for cooling this year. It's one of our next steps. Again, because of the nature of where we are in the protected land, we also this year, or a couple years ago, started our own reforestation project. And so we have friends who own a big plot of land, and we hired a doctorate of expert on trees in Brazil. And the plan is to replant and repopulate endangered trees that have been used in the aging of cachaça. And so we started off really small. It's actually a very difficult project because no one even knows where to get seeds for these trees. No one knows where to get saplings. This isn't a thing that really existed before. So it's been a big learning curve about finding. Sometimes we have to climb these trees just to get anything to try to plant. We've planted in places where they've all just died. It's been big. However, this last year, we're now partnering with a lot of other landowners who are just spreading this project into a larger scale. And then the next year, we think we're actually going to start exposing that out to many more companies. And so it's kind of fun that it started off really small in us planting trees on this 40-acre property. So now we're looking at probably 500 acres across 3 states of Brazil that are now being involved as far as planting trees there. And it just keeps expanding. So that's very cool. 10% of all of our proceeds from our Two Wood series go into that project. And then this year, I guess last year, we announced a negative company. We do all carbon offsets for everything we do. We analyzed everything we do as a company. Obviously, the largest thing would be airline flights for people like me, is for carbon offsets to make us neutral. And then our reforestation project makes us a carbon negative company. So we're good people. We make good booze too.
You guys are definitely cool people. You're for sure an extension of that.
Okay. And we don't have anything else at our distillery to do. It's just booze. We're out. Nobody comes out to us. We're like 15 minutes down a rock and dirt road from a town of 2,000 people. So we're not a tourist attraction. Please come. We'll try to get you there somehow. But I don't have anything to do aside from cut cane down and drink cachaça.
Wouldn't it be the worst, man? I mean, we did a virtual tour a couple of years ago of it, and it was pretty awesome. So, if we have to go down there and do that again, I'm in. Antoine, so for you, obviously you have multiple distilleries and stuff like that, but there's definitely a lot of regulations that you guys are held to as well. So
I would say for the sake of time, we'll just focus in on one of them.
Well, you got somewhere to be?
So no, I would just say you do not want the 45-minute diatribe of what each of my distilleries are doing. I don't think we don't want to be here for that. So probably focusing on the best would probably be putting in so let's just start for the beginning. We're an island that relies on the natural terroir of the spirit. So the word sustainability and organic is just kind of ingrained into the overall process. It's sort of, we have no other way of making our product, which is the French government regulates everything we do, and it has to be as natural as it possibly can be. So the organic or sustainability is just kind of the only way we can survive. It's a huge part of Martinique's GDP. So there's like a lot that goes into like the whole entire like process of farming, and it's very long. But JM in general, for this conversation, is basically in the middle of like a jungle at the foot of an active volcano. So it really creates kind of a very interesting and separate microclimate that's kind of special for just Martinique in general. The volcano is actually active, so it's kind of creating this beautiful kind of, I don't know, almost like a fog that sits over the entire region. And Martinique being very close to the equator, so it creates this almost like microwave effect for the sugarcane. It thrives in this like beautiful kind of humid, very, very humid environment. If you've ever been to the South and been in a rainstorm, it's very similar to that. You're just kind of snapped in between this two sets of moisture. It can be very brutal. So our answer to that in Martinique is most of our cane, like as Jim said, they're doing hand cutting, and I believe so is Kyle. We do mostly machine cutting because of just labor practices. It's an efficiency. It's much more efficient for us to cut by machine, and it's it's a less laborious process. So we only need, instead of having a bunch of people in a field cutting cane, we have people kind of hanging out in a John Deere cutting cane. So it just kind of works out better. And then from there, we drop all the cane off, and it's all gravity fed into the stills or into the crushers from JM. We crush to dust. So as like everyone else is crushing once, we pull every ounce of moisture that can possibly pull from that cane.
We're losing you, Antoine.
Because again, we're working on it's almost like am I back?
You're back. Yeah, you just got that rough open connection.
Sorry, guys. It's not the best. A lot of people on the internet out here. So we crush the dust. We use all that bagasse for everything that can be possibly used for heating. It's fuel for heating the stills. It's it heats everything. Heats the produce, the heads and tails for cleaning projects. Same as what they're doing in the other two distilleries. We're using the leftover ferment for fertilizer in the banana fields that sit in the basically they sit side by side. So jam.
No.
Oh, Antoine, how about we're gonna let your internet catch up with you.
So they're growing both of these things at the same time. Okay, sorry.
It's okay.
You have to drop, and you're gonna be like cut out.
I know. Sorry, guys.
We might just have you type everything out into the chat. So everything that you have to answer from now on, you have to just write it out.
I'll just type it.
Hopefully it'll gain strength as time goes on, but we'll see what happens. So there's kind of like that common thread amongst all you guys where there really is a lot of emphasis put on keeping these traditions going and everything like that. And part of the rum production is certainly aging rum, and I think amongst you three, like, you guys have some of the coolest like rum aging processes going on, whether it's different types of wood or just like the insane climates that stuff has to age in. So Jim, I'm gonna start with you on this one. There, as you had mentioned earlier, there's a ton of different types of wood that are found in the rainforest, and what are some of the projects that Novo Fogo has done so far? Are there any in the future that you think are going to be cool that you can talk about right now when it comes to aging the cachaça?
So as far as like aging cachaça, especially I mean, the world of cachaça is sort of like the Brazilian wood aging dates has a long history of aging in Brazilian woods, but really that dates back to just like they wanted to store their cachaça in something, so they built a vat out of the trees they had out back. And that's really how it goes, because that's how cachaça started. Is like a drink of the people. I mean, we talk about how many distilleries there are in the Caribbean, which is what, probably like a couple hundred if you include all the Claron and things like that. There are probably 40,000 distilleries in Brazil. It's a lot, and about 80% of those are illegal. And so people are just making cachaça out of whatever. These places that don't have electricity, they just light a fire under things. They just produce spirit because that's the way it's always been done. And a lot of that hasn't changed. And when you make a fresh cane spirit that way, it really oftentimes tastes terrible because there's nowhere to hide. Any flaws in the distillate are very apparent if you make spirit that way. So cachaça itself has always been, like I said, a drink of the people. And the middle class didn't drink cachaça until about 20 years ago. If you went, it's the same way as like mezcal. If you went to Mexico and ordered a mezcal prior to like 20 years ago, they look at you to be like, why? You're not poor. Because like that's just not what you don't look like a poor person. You look like you can drink tequila. What are you talking about? That's kind of the way cachaça was forever. And so it's always just been born out of necessity. You just age it whenever you have around. It turns out a lot of these woods make for fun flavors. They're a pain in the ass to age in because they're all these like crazy Brazilian hardwoods that survive the rainforest. So they're terrible for aging spirits in. There's been a big shift to oak as far as, I know that it's not as much fun for nerds who like weird booze like myself and all of us on this call, I'm assuming. But the reality is like there's been a big shift to oak because you can't get these woods anymore. It's illegal to cut down trees. The only way to get wood is if the government cuts down a project and sells the wood off, whether it's reclaimed wood somehow, or once every 20 years, if you own property, you're allowed to petition to cut down 5% of the trees on your own property once every 20 years. And that's what you can do to again harvest wood. The illegal wood trade is rampant. And so this is kind of our preface to saying like, hey, we do this too, but be careful, slow down. That's again to tie into mezcal. It's the same thing as like, cool, everybody just drink all the tempestate. Nobody knows how to make that again because all those plants are gone. And so, yes, we do Brazilian wood aging. We have some experimental barrels. Knock, knock, come on in. My children are about to join me as they're about to go out to bed. And so all the backbone of our stuff is always oak, right? Everything we age in is going to be aged in oak. Here's one. Here's two. Hi, girls. Say hi, girls.
Hi, girls.
Good night, girls. Good night. Good night, Eva. So we're always going to age in oak first. That's the primarily that's what all of our age expressions are aged in, solely oak, American oak, ex-bourbon barrels, reconditioned. And then if we're going to do a Brazilian wood, we're always going to finish it in Brazilian wood. We think the oak provides a better backbone for the spirit because oak tastes good. But also that allows us to have an effect with fewer barrels. We have very few of the barrels of Brazilian woods. We're getting a few more. We have some barrels of expressions that we haven't released, but really, I don't know if we're going to release those as much or not. We might release them in Brazil and not here. We have a lot of SKUs, which as anyone in the spirit selling industry can attest that it can be a pain in the ass. Right. And plus, they're not yielding the flavors that we really want compared to the other expressions. So we definitely have some barrels that I can't say what they are. That we're working on that may or may not get a release up here. But right now, nothing this year will come out, especially since a lot of markets still haven't even gotten some of our expressions because we made so little of them.
Yeah, that's. I remember that being part of the conversation a few years back. So I can only imagine that it's just gotten worse with time. Kyle, I know that we talked about it a little bit, before everybody jumped on, but why don't you talk about some of the barrel aging that you guys are doing, out in Oahu?
Yeah, for sure. So just to preface it all, nobody has ever barrel aged spirits in Hawaii in any real way before us. So there's lots of things that have color that are, are bullshit. I mean, they're disingenuous. Nobody's actually, so there was no data on this whatsoever. Nobody to ask. So we basically just bought barrels and tried out everything we could. So we've done, obviously used bourbon. We've done New American Oak. We've done all of the different wine casks. We've got crazy shit. We got tequila barrels. We did the Lafroig thing. We chased down all kinds of sort of ridiculousness in the name of like, look, if we're going to try it, let's try as many cool things as we can. Almost everything we produce goes into oak, just like what Jim and the Novo Fogo guys do. Oak really does set the tone in a really great way, whether that's New American Oak or used oak. It's really able to do something nice to the spirit in a relatively short amount of time, and then it goes into finishing stuff afterwards. The most interesting thing that we've done, and it's our first foray into making barrels here, is we've taken fallen koa trees and made barrels out of that. So for those of you who are unaware of what koa is an overpriced wood. It's endemic Hawaiian acacia. It's really beautiful. It's quite stunning and gives off this really phenomenal red flavor, almost like Chris Sinclair's tropical drink behind him. It's got this really, ridiculously red hue to it. And it's not uncommon actually to age in acacia. Like they used to fix barrels in Barbados with it. There's some history with that, but nobody's done koa before. So this is a really unique and fun thing. And really the experiment is really cool because it allows us to use other Hawaiian hardwoods and chase down some of that. But a lot like our other friends, you're trying not to damage the environment. So you have to wait for other trees to fall or there to be the right stuff. The good thing about koa is people only use the pretty koa to make things. And we can use all of the leftover scraps from all these knucklehead furniture makers and stuff to actually build out our barrels, which is pretty slick. So we're able to do that. It doesn't help to keep the cost down at all, even though you would think it would. But we're chasing down something pretty fun. For us, we're still learning our way through barrel aging. And I'll be really upfront about that. Our best spirits are unaged white rums. I think our aged stuff can be really cool, and we have some big hits, and then we have some stuff that I don't think is actually that phenomenal in the global scope. And we have no interest in being like good for Hawaii. We want to be good globally. We want to be sitting on shelves next to all of the awesome marks from GM and Comont and Novo Fogo and a million other awesome rum brands. So we're still learning some of that stuff. But I would say part of the fun of that is you can come to Kohana or find us on the shelf and you'll get sort of an ever-changing thing until we find that. So you'll get a lot of opportunity to learn as well.
Yeah, I think my favorite part of your guys' most recent release of the koa barrel was that beforehand you guys actually already had a rum that was called the koa, and so that's actually what I'm sipping on right now, and it's just really hilarious if you guys visit their website, it's the koa, but it's not aged in koa wood, and it's just it's kind of all over the website, which I think was smart, and obviously you guys have to do that, but I got a little kick out of it.
We dicked that up. I'm still learning lots of stuff.
Well, it's a process, right? And I think that's it's been kind of cool to see Kohana grow over the past couple of years. I mean, I do know that when I first joined with JVS 3 years ago, one of the first things I asked was like, can I reach out to brands and see if we can sell them? And they said yes. And the first people I reached out to was actually you guys for Kohana, and then you had just signed your deal with Southern, which was devastating for me at the time. So maybe next time. We won't do any tampering tonight, but I'll work on you later. Antoine, hopefully your connection's a little bit better. Maybe just don't be so long-winded. And
I'll try not to be as animated. Maybe that'll help out. We'll see if that works.
yeah, just like don't move so much.
I won't move at all. Aging. I would say over the last like 10 to 15 years is when Martinique really, really, really started expanding outside of just like your traditional used bourbon barrel. Which, I mean, we're an island. We got no natural grown oak really in the island itself, so we're relying heavily on used bourbon barrels. But now, finishing things in it, and now there's a huge expansion on aging in anything, and mostly finishing. So like cognacs, armagnacs, Calvados, Scott. I mean, you name it, we're experimenting with it. Even now, we're experimenting with like American oak grown in France and all this other crazy stuff that we're working on. We've started messing with some of our core recipes and finishing them in different things, and some of that stuff will be hitting the market like in 3 or 4 years. And private barrel stuff that we're working on, and we really kind of just touched the surface on what we really can do when it comes to agricole rum and what we can age in. And then with St. Lucia, I mean, they're one distillery, so they've been experimenting with like any barrel you think of, they've experimented with putting rum in it. Did you lose me? Am I here? Am I still around? Someone give me a thumbs up. Perfect, thank you. Zinfandel barrels, sherry barrels, I mean, you name it, they're working on it and they're messing with it. And so it's kind of it's going to be fun when we really kind of get to bring that to the market and bring that to the people. Some of the really rad stuff we're working on at both islands, really.
Nice. So, a lot of what we end up doing in this industry, especially if you're into rum, is you're dealing with misconceptions. And I think even within the rum world, cane-based rum is possibly even worse than the rest of them in terms of what we kind of have to explain and stuff like that. So when you guys are out talking, about your different rums, like what are some of those big conceptions that you would, possibly like to address right now? Or what do you hear commonly that you're like, oh, I hear this all the time, but it's actually, this is how it's really done, or this is what we try to convey. We're trying to upset that whole, like what traditionally it might've been this, but it's actually this. So why don't we start with you, Kyle?
Yeah. Okay. I can speak really specifically. Since we're so small, we really don't have, I don't talk to a whole lot of people outside of Hawaii, so I deal pretty much just with that, with my market here. There's a little bit in California and pretty soon, hopefully New York and a couple other spots, Japan. But generally speaking, what we run across is folks just not understanding the second step of rum. So like in Hawaii, it's like, oh, that's something from sugar. And that's it. That's as far as we have. So then it's like, all right, now the good thing is they don't have anything to clean up. Like I don't have much of a mess. They're just like, oh, like Bacardi, Captain Morgan, whatever. There's no like really deep-seated like love or hate. So it's a little more apathetic. So I'm actually really fortunate because I start with a blank slate mostly. That being said, I think the ones that everybody will say is, oh, rum's sweet. I think there's also a magnitude of misused verbiage that's just really hard to get around across the board. So I think that's a difficult thing, just in qualifying what you have actually. But yeah, that's, for me, I don't see it as being that difficult because we have a little bit of a blank slate. So I don't know. You folks that deal in very, very mature markets on the mainland maybe have a different opinion.
Yeah, Jim, why don't you chime in on that? Because I mean, obviously with your time at Roomba too, I'm sure you heard some real great great things, and then that's just continued probably through your time with Novo Fogo.
I mean, as far as like cachaça goes, there aren't a lot of like super widespread misconceptions, aside from the fact that everybody mispronounces the entire category. We don't have like most people. I mean, the biggest quote unquote misconception, if you will, is that people just say it's Brazilian rum. I don't care if you call it Brazilian rum. Feel free to do it. Brazilians care; they'll be very offended because more cachaça is made in the world than rum is, and it predates rum by almost 100 years. So in their mind, they're like, yeah, we get our own category by sheer volume and history. But there aren't a lot of real big misconceptions about the spirit itself. Most people have had. I would say that what's funny is that, again, things have changed a lot. Obviously, like anybody who's older than 30 and has been involved in booze has started off with industrial cachaças, because that was the only thing that was available, I guess, more than 10 years ago now. And then of course some craft cachaças came along, and that was a big change. But today's bartenders all coming up, and today's enthusiasts who are getting into spirits, most of them haven't even, especially in the US, haven't even had industrial cachaça, because those brands don't really even make a play for it. So they've only ever had brands like ours, Leblanc, Avoir, maybe some smaller ones. They've probably seen the industrial ones. But that's been a fun thing over the past 10 years, because I run around the market and Leblanc's made well. It's made the right way. It's not made in a horrible way. It's craft cachaça. And bartenders are constantly just like, oh man, this is so much better. I hate Leblanc. And I'm like, you have not had bad cachaça, my friend. The other cachaças out there are horrible. These are the things we grew up with. And so I think anyone over 30, they may have tasted cachaça and had just a bad experience with it, because it's a horrible spirit, because they're making ethanol, not making booze that we want to drink. But there aren't a lot of other misconceptions about the spirit, I don't think.
Okay, and then see, Antoine, are you still there? Or did you have to go take care of your kid?
Oh, I'm here. No, I'm here. I was given a pro tip that maybe cutting off the camera would help connectivity, so I'm gonna try to give it a shot. That way we can keep the conversation rolling.
Okay.
I don't see your face, man.
I'll come back. I promise. I just don't want people to miss out on the information.
Guess what? It didn't work.
Yeah, stop moving.
So if you really want to, you can call in on the phone.
Starters with just rum in general, that just
Kiwa, can you just take over for this fucker?
He's kind of back.
Currently eating tacos in a sports bra, so I will not share my.
I got to
Talking about misconceived rum notions, I had to go plug my. Is that what the question was?
Yeah, common misconceptions about the category or your products.
No, it's just like work. Antoine, I got you. Just kidding. I would say that in the grand scheme of things with our agricole brands, we're really like set up for success because of the AOC designation, which, was the first. The GIs are very, they're a topic of conversation or something that are coming to be just now, wonderfully, but we've had a AOC since 1996, which took 23 years to create. So we're kind of ahead of the game in that way, and there's not a lot of like misconception about rum agricole, except for it's definitely not a consumer spirit yet. And as much as I would like it to be so, and I would love to sell rum for the majority of our job,
our liqueurs pay the bills. So that's where we're at in the U.S. right now, unfortunately. But
Hey, man, I need a liqueur.
What?
I said I need a liqueur. Stat.
Shh. God damn it. I knew I shouldn't have said anything. You want a canned cocktail. Shut up. Those are what is, trending right now. So good job there, Jim. Those things are delicious, may I add. Yeah, but otherwise I think we are in a good spot with the St. Lucian brands as well. We are highly affiliated with Worspa and have been for a long time. So that is helpful in some capacity. And we're very clear and consistent about our messaging with that brand. Also, we're the only distillery in St. Lucia, so that is very helpful with our image. So I would say compared to other categories of rum, we're in a good spot. We're in Switzerland. We're in neutral territory with all of the rum controversy because we have the AOC and we don't add sugar to any of our spirits. And also we're very friendly with everybody. So yeah, we're just gonna stay over here in this nice neutral territory. Yeah.
Well, this happy hour is the place of controversial topics. So we might have to get some shit talking going eventually. I'll find the right questions and we'll figure that out. But one thing that I think you guys run into is because there was this established category before, and I know Kyle probably sees it a lot just because people have this idea of what agricole rums are and stuff like that. Whereas, sometimes the complaint will be like, oh, it's good, but it's way too expensive, and that's because they're comparing it to products that are just not, the same caliber as far as I'm concerned. But I wonder, how you guys go about that. I mean, and, Jim, you kind of had to run into this, you run into similar things because people are used to other, more factory produced cassasha. So, what are the ways that you guys deal with that, and what are some of the things that you do in order to make that happen?
I mean, for us, I mean, it's always the pricing is always a fight. I mean, we all work and manage marketing companies. Kyle actually makes the spirit himself to some degree, but we're a marketing company, and Kyle has the unfortunate factor of making that product in the U.S. So his product actually costs money.
Yeah.
I'll go forth and say our product, the juice inside the bottle costs about $1 to make. Everything else is taxes, fees, shipping, boxes, bottles, corks, and then obviously salaries and markups. And so you can teach a whole seminar on how $1 of juice becomes $30 on the shelf very easily without anything extraneous, and nobody's still making any money. You just have to prove to people that you have a spirit that's worth spending money for. The big companies, they sell for less, not because their product costs less to make, even though it does, but the reality is their bottle might cost 15 cents to make the contents, but that's not a big difference. They just already have the volume. And they're coming at it as far as they sell it in another country. The bulk of their sale is in another country, and so you just have to talk to people and convince them that it's worth the price. Because it's not. It's also, I mean, our product, I would say, we fight to have a good price on the shelf. Even our 2 wood expressions don't. I guess bar costs don't get above $30 on the shelf. They don't get above 40 and change, aside from some high-end single barrels. So, but again, those are sort of marketing costs for us. We wish we could sell $60 bottle cachaça, but the world isn't ready.
Kyle, so when you hear that, what's typically your response to the price being so much higher than everything else, or anything like that? If you ever hear that.
Yeah, I mean, Jim hit a portion of it right on the head, which is American labor, American land, and the same archaic system that takes their percentages at each step is a really tough place to be in. There's I guess 2 things I'll say about it. The first is I try to change it from not why does it cost so much, how can that cost so little. I talk about that a lot. Like, look, let's talk about these people working these fields. Let's talk, because everything comes from the ground. Like, this is, if I do one thing in the next 20 years running this company, it's going to be all of the things on your shelf, someone farmed something. And so if it's really, really cheap, you're playing a part of the system that allows them not to live up to what they can be. So I try to really change the dynamic of the conversation by not answering why it's expensive and saying X, Y, and Z, but instead saying, why do you think that's expensive? And how could you get a $14 bottle, a liter bottle onto a shelf in the United States? Knowing here's your tax rate, here's this. So I kind of changed the narrative on that. We sell really like affordable luxuries in this like millennial market. I'm not out there selling Range Rovers. I'm selling $50 instead of $15. That's a shorter gap. So for a lot of people, that gap gets made up in their own mind really, really quickly. So honestly, I'm unabashedly okay with our pricing stuff. And I struggle, like I'll go into awesome grocers here that only support local in every other way, but like won't carry my rum because on the shelf it's $44. And they're like, that's fucking crazy. And to them it is fucking crazy. And I'm okay with that, knowing everything else we know. And sometimes you just kind of have to take your lumps. But yeah, I just changed the dynamics. The truth is, I just asked the other question. How in the hell can it be that cheap?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to do it. I mean, I know that I run into that quite a bit when it comes to selling mezcals. You know, when I see certain things on the shelf and you see the price point that you're at, you're just kind of like, oh man, who's getting fucked in that scenario? You know, and it's a real bummer. And then when you actually see the process, and I'm glad that you guys kind of all touched on it earlier, because that was one question that I had. You know, like sugarcane cutting is one of the most brutal things that you can do voluntarily in this world right now, you know. And you know, I think that's something that needs to be considered with the pricing and stuff like that. Antoine appears to have shifted to his iPhone, so let's see what he has to say. Hopefully we can hear him now.
We back? I'm back.
You sound great.
You sound smooth.
Yeah.
Now this is the Antoine I know and love.
This is way better. Price, right? We're talking about price?
Yeah.
Perfect. So I would argue that we are, personally, I would argue that we're underpriced, but I think that what we produce is on par with anything that would be coming out of the U.S. when it comes to aged spirits, or even like unaged spirits. I think what we make is amazing. But obviously I'm very biased. So, you know, when it comes to costing these things out, we're an imported product coming from a small island. So, you know, we aren't, you know, it costs a lot of money. We've got French labor and French labor laws and French taxes, and the AOC is not, you know, we're not making things cheap. We're making them authentic. We're making them with feeling and some sort of historical relevance. So we're almost doing it the hard way. We're not, you know, we're not adding chemicals. We're not using, you know, we're using data in science and nature instead of chemical science, or like, so it takes a lot for us to get it done. And it takes a lot for the product to get here, especially, you know, when we're talking about Martinique. St. Lucia, you know, we're a little bit different. We're working with molasses. So, you know, we don't have, St. Lucia does not make sugar. So they're bringing this molasses in. So that's, you know, one cost on top of that. But, you know, it is a little bit less price prohibitive, or it's more price prohibitive there than in, say, like in Martinique. So obviously the product is much different, but it's still made with care. They still do things the right way. They're not cutting corners. They're not buying cheap molasses. They're not, you know, buying terrible, you know, not fermenting in the wrong way or anything like that. Like they really take the time and the effort to make sure that they're making the product delicious and right, and really standing by the production. So, again, there's a reason why things just cost a little bit more. It's because, especially in spirits, like there's a reason why rum that costs just a touch more is actually really worth it. So.
Sure. Can I add one more thing?
No.
Yeah.
I've been able to visit Martinique, obviously living in Hawaii. I haven't been able to go down to Brazil yet, but we're going to work on that, Jim, now that we're friends. I would challenge anybody that worries about price a lot to go and look those people in the face and tell them that they pay too much on the other end. It's like,
right.
Like that's just not the case. Like go look that farmer in the face, go look that distiller in the face and say like, oh, you want to change something.
There's just a disconnect with I think there's always a disconnect between distillates, and I think it's slowly kind of changing because so we have craft brewing in the US. Obviously that's helped people kind of recognize some kind of locality to the alcohol that they're consuming. And so slowly but surely they're kind of understanding that when it comes to spirits. Still, unfortunately, we can't play kind of on that, but people are kind of starting to respect the process and the struggle because they're seeing these people and they're able to go visit them on a regular basis and visit their distilleries and listen to their stories and connect and understand. And, slowly but surely the struggle and then education gets out there.
Definitely. So, I know with you guys being so intimately involved with, the brands that you are with and seeing that process, do you have any pet peeves that you see within the industry that you just can't help but to be annoyed by them that you would hope, hopefully just through education and stuff we'll be able to change in the next couple of years as more people come to the Church of Rum? Like, is there some things that you can think of that just continuously bother you in that realm? Jim, we'll start with you because I feel like you're going to have some good ones.
How many can I possibly name?
I'll do all of them. All of them.
I mean, we already talked about the misconception that rum is sweet. Obviously, there are sweet rums, but the reality is cane rums are not. No one across the cane rum world was really adding any sugar post distillate aside from some third party bottlers. We're not sweet. Rum is cheap. Cane rum is more expensive to make than any American whiskey. Aside from that, if you factor in time and barrel aging as far as an aged rum goes or cachaça, it's more expensive to do that than it is to make American whiskey as far as the volumes go. So everyone thinks that rum is cheap, and we have this big disconnect in the rum world. We have rum enthusiasts who are out there scrambling over $200 bottles that are allocated, and they're fanatics over some things that we're not going to get into that conversation.
Oh, come on.
And then you have the rest of the U.S. is the largest consumer of rum in the world, but it's all basically 3 brands, and what they produce is questionable whether it's even rum or not. And we're battling these giant marketing machines, and it's just so hard to combat against that because people have been ingrained that in their mind when they're 19 years old drinking the Malibu and pineapple, that's their conception of what rum is, and they carry that until they're 30, and then someone has to bend their wills around rum being a good spirit. That's probably that's the biggest one take away from Rumba. Rumba, we had the luxury there. We're a rum bar. Nobody walks into that bar and doesn't know it's a rum bar because you don't just randomly walk into the place and be like, oh, oops, it's a rum bar. And that happens 1 out of every 200 people. But people go in there and they're expecting to have rum, so they're open to the conversation. But outside of that environment, it's not what people generally turn to because we have such, around the country, people are just so ingrained into their whiskeys, and now the people who are into spirits are all into agave spirits, which is not a bad thing. But rum is just still hanging out, making really delicious product that's really interesting.
Kyle, what do you have to add to that?
So I think Jim's points are all I mean, super straight on, laser on it. The things that actually frustrate me the most about rum at the moment are the people hindering from rum being more accessible by trying to like only fanaticize everything. Like if you don't know enough, like it can't be cool. Like we have to be okay continuing to educate. And it's not Antoine, Jim, Kiowa, you guys at the distributor house. That's not enough. We need advocates going out there and doing it. And so many of these people, because they love it, find themselves unable to level with somebody that needs that like initial introduction. I think one of the things that needs to get turned off is a little bit of like the intertwined hate inside of rum, and instead maybe it's because like I'm the Hawaii guy and like fuck that, like let's be cool, but there's something weird going on with it. I think it's not allowing people to easily find themselves inside of this group, and if they don't become part of it, we won't survive. I mean, maybe the other guys will, but that would be my biggest thing. Is actually our biggest fans sometimes are the people that are causing some of the most pain.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that there's a lot of conversations that take place, you know, on different forums, you know, that may exist on Facebook, that if you're not from, you know, Barbados or Jamaica, like nobody's talking about it, which has always kind of blown my mind, you know, because you have so many great rums coming, you know, and other sugarcane distillates like Kasasha coming from all these different places. It's never made sense to me why those ones kind of got singled out. I was like, hey, that's where quality starts, and then everything else is just below them, you know. And I think that's something that some of these fanatics have adopted, and it's really, really frustrating for me. Antoine, what do you think? Kind of, you know, what are some of these things that really bother you still that you see a lot of?
I mean, for just like kind of my job is all encompassing. So I not only do I get to hang out with like cool bartenders and come up with fun, rad drinks, but I also have to do consumer in-store tastings and talk to the general public on all the time. I've probably done over, I don't know, 200 of these things. And the things that come out of the general consumer's mouth is we have a long way to go. People are still shocked that things are aged and that they are clear when they're distilled, no matter what they are. And that's still like getting that even to understand, like, well, if it's molasses, it's dark. No, like everything's clear. And then it's hopefully put into a barrel over an extended amount of time, and then it gets color. And get people just to even understand that concept for spirits in general, even especially rum, would probably be something that I would hope more people would just understand. And then we can get to the second tier layer and the other layers of, like, you know, complexities of white cane distillates. Like, I would love that to be the general populace conversation, but it's just not. The conversation is really just getting people to understand that, like, that basic concept of, like, if it has color, it should have been put in wood. That's it. If it wasn't, then you should be questioning everything about it. And if they don't give you any information on it, then you should be questioning everything about it. Second, I would like to say that I would like a lot more people to just really understand where things come from. And mostly this is like an industry thing. I see a lot in mezcal where, like, people want to, like, you know, bash certain drums, but then we'll side with, quote unquote, like the big dogs or the enemies or whatever. And there's just isn't enough understanding of, like, where this money is actually going. There's only like 50% of the actual education on these particular issues. And then you want to blast out to the world that you stand by these causes of farmers, or, you know, only organic or only local or whatever, but really you only know 50% of the conversation. Half the time you don't even know, like, where you, as, you know, as the buyer, you're giving your money to, and really understanding, like, who you're giving power to when you say yes to the buying agreement, and what your role is in, like, this overall, like, you know, why can't I get any cool shit? Why aren't these mezcals, like, well, why are they so high cost? Like, well, you're playing the game wrong. And you're not really understanding fully what's really going on. So I don't know. That would be my two biggest things that I hope would change in the world.
Yeah, I definitely think that, rum is kind of infamous for the lack of transparency. And I know that there's, brands like all of your guys that are starting to change that conversation. So, for everybody on this call right now, like, because that information is not as easily accessible, what are some of the things that you guys do one, to continue your education, and then two, like, how do you kind of pull back that veil and really get to the truth of it? Like, what are some of the things you guys have done in the past? Like, what are the things that you think like work out? So I'll start with you, Kyle, on that one.
For the what we do to continue learning side of things.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a big part of it. Antoine touched on one key thing, which is actually listening to the end consumer. I think a lot of times we get caught in our own thing. So you listen to them, you listen to other distillers, you read fucking everything you can, and you try to glean things off of, especially as a young distillery, off of people that have done it really well, and you just pay attention to them and, beg and plead for, any amount of information you can get. And then as far as like transparency goes, you answer every question as honestly as you can. And then once you start realizing you need to make that publicly available information, you just put it fucking out there. I mean, I it's not rocket science in some ways with that. I think if people want to know, you should let them know unless you have something to hide. Now I understand, like, every bottle can't read, 6 days worth of fermentation temperatures if you don't do a temperature control. And like, there's all kinds of different things, and that's not really possible. But in general, being open source is the way to go. I don't know if anybody else feels like that's what's going to separate the better spirits companies that are coming up, is that ability to be transparent and therefore authentic. Authenticity has been famed so well for so long that now I think the only way to actually show people outwardly is by being hyper transparent and vigilant in, that side of things. Does that answer the question okay?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and maybe just another add-on for your own personal education. Like, what are some of the resources that you're using to continue to kind of, to be somewhat of an authority on just like the category of rum?
Yeah, I think the largest things that I try to do as far as that go, so there's two sides. There's the science and distillation side, which I'm super, super fortunate because my degree's in chemistry. That's all my PhD studies, all of that are in the realm of chemistry. So I have a pretty good handle on what's going on there, but I ask a ton of questions. I try to, as frequently as possible, be talking to people. So for like us, it's a lot of like distillery forums and things like that, trying to just learn and learn and learn. And then on the other side, I find it more valuable to taste everything and develop my own opinion about it instead of just reading what other people think about it. So I'm really big on trying as many things as possible. But you'll still see me at like trade events, going to other rum guys talks, other spirits people, because I just want to learn. And out here, we don't have a ton of access to other like hyper knowledgeable folks. So anytime that's available, I'm a big part of it. I do stay off the forums for rum pretty wholeheartedly because I think they're more opinion than fact. So, I struggle with that a little bit. I wish they were a little more like fact-based. But yeah, this is the world we live in.
Yeah, one of these days I'll show that kind of restraint. I'm not there yet, but maybe that'll be part of my pandemic resolutions, is to get off of those things. Plus, I just I pop off too much, so one of these days I'll step away. But Jim, how about you, man? Like, just in terms of keeping yourself educated and stuff like that, what are some of the means that you're using?
I mean, now that I can't go travel and talk to people constantly, which was how I did it before.
Yeah.
I mean, that was really what prior to this situation we're in now, that's really it. Cause that's what I get to do. I get to travel and just talk to people about rum and cachaça constantly. And so I try to absorb knowledge that way. And sadly, now I will say that a lot of it is through Facebook forums and such, and have to weed through some garbage to get to some content where I learn things. And that's about it as far as like self learning. I mean, I obviously I try to stay tight with my rum family and talk to them as much as possible. Try as many new things as possible. I fortunately have a bar that gets every new rum that is quality that ever comes out. So I'll go being able to taste every rum that's on that wall.
Nice. And then Antoine, how about for you, bud?
On the education front, I mean, I rely on my rum community. I can definitely say I've probably reached out to Jim and Drew and Kyle on something that has to do with something you may know about when it comes to sugarcane distillates. I kind of work like same as Jim. I travel the country. I get to talk to a lot of people who are specifically focused on rum as well and love it. I get to, the same bar that he gets to visit that has all the rad dope rums. I get to go there as well. And, I rely on the people who are smart. Jen, who works over at Rumba is great. Someone who I bounce a lot of questions off of. Kiwa, who works for our company as well. I mean, my boss, Ben Jones, like there's just, I really, really rely on the people who I know and who I trust. And I go to them. I do not focus on Facebook or social media when it comes to my education or any sort of opinion when it comes to rum in general. I just think it's unhealthy. And it's especially in the one forum we're kind of really focusing on, that place is just a trash place that only garbage exists. And I don't understand why smart people who focus on rum in general even waste their time on that forum. It only breeds, especially after like, we can all have our opinions on things that went down, but especially after the whole plantation thing and how disgusting that forum got, it just really turned me off and I kind of got away from it. So, but I just, I rely on my people. I'm very lucky to have a lot of smart individuals around me who've educated themselves on the thing that I'm passionate about. And especially I don't really drink anymore. So, over the last 2 years, I've kind of gotten away from the consumption of alcohol. So it really, really is, tasting and word of mouth and talking to my friends and just kind of, asking questions as if I was, like I don't know anything.
Yeah, I think that's great. And, I've definitely benefited from my relationships with you guys and being able to reach out. I mean, I called Antoine earlier about a hand, harvesting situation. I mean, it was just completely, ridiculous. But, hopefully, basically what I'm trying to, get at for everybody that's, on the call tonight is that, you really can reach out to any of these guys, to any of these people that are in this community. And, I've always felt that way and I've always been very fortunate, and it's definitely become even more so the case, through this whole pandemic, like one of the guys that's on here tonight, like, Ed Rudisil was on the happy hour last night. And, I took a flyer and I was like, man, I love listening to this guy's podcast. I've learned so much from it. I would like to, have him on. And fortunately he had some time and it was great. It was, one of my favorite conversations. So I definitely, encourage you guys to do that and, reach out to people. I know,
Shout out
Jones,
to Ed. What up, Ed?
Ben Jones just popped on too. And that was someone that I went and introduced myself to when I was at Miami Rum Congress. And I just, everybody's so approachable in this business. And so I, definitely want to encourage you guys to go out, say what's up to people, ask them questions. Cause I mean, who doesn't want to talk about the stuff that you like, So with that being the case, does anybody have any questions from the forum that they'd like to unmute themselves and ask for the guys while we still have them?
Yes.
Okay, Sinclair, of course, my co-host of the Good Bottle Podcast. Plug.
Kyle, when can I get something other than just the white rum in California?
I'm working on some depletion issues with our distributor there, relative to when they'll be able to bring in some new. So you can get some pretty quickly. Other people Like if you're trying to sell it, it's going to take me a little bit of time to make some other critical business decisions.
So what's the likelihood of me getting like a barrel if we were to do a barrel buy?
It's doable. It'll take some time though.
Okay.
Well, I got you. There's a couple ways we can work it out. I'll tell you, my current distributor won't be handling it, so we'll have to go through some other mechanism. But California has a couple.
Yeah, here we are, JVS Imports. Love.
I'm
nice
sure.
to meet you.
I'm sure Southern won't be too mad about a single barrel, but whatever.
It's pander, for this. How about anybody else? Anybody else have any questions while we have these guys?
I just want to, if we're shamelessly plugging, if anyone else is interested in any private barrels, we've got you. Holler at your boy.
I have 3 toast levels you can pick from.
I think I have 3 total.
Well, guys, just send me all the samples and I'll make the decisions for him. So we'll make that happen. How about anybody else have any questions or comments about the happy hour tonight? I think we're good there. Well, fellas, thank you so much for joining us tonight, for offering us a little bit of relief and escapism from the pandemic and all the shittiness that comes with it. Hopefully we will be doing this in person soon, and looking forward to hanging out with you guys. Everybody else, thank you so much for showing up tonight. We have a lot of new faces, and hopefully this has been an escape for you as well. I'll be doing these for the rest of the month. It's 7:00 Pacific Standard Time. We have guests, and the topics kind of change all the time, and it's we've been able to keep it fun and interesting. So and eventually we'll release some of this stuff on YouTube and also on our podcast as well. So I don't know, any other things from Kyle, Jim, Antoine, anything?
I mean, I would finish with, if anybody finds themselves on the island of Oahu, like, say hello. Or if you have friends that are here, like, it's a really fun thing to be able to show people around, and we're in a unique position. So I would love to connect, and I'm available. Like I said at the very beginning, my email is somewhere in the chat thing, but I think I can speak for Antoine, Jim, and myself. If you have questions of us, just reach out. We love helping solve problems and answer those things. So yeah.
It's all I'm doing. I will type out everything.
Yeah.
I got nothing but time, baby. You got some questions? Huh?
Please,
God, help.
Well, awesome. Well, again, fellas, thank you guys so much for being part of my virtual happy hour. Thank you to everyone that showed up tonight. Hopefully we'll see you, once or twice more before the month is out. But stay safe out there, stay healthy, and cheers, everybody.
Thank y'all.